Our second item is receive City Council donation subcommittee report and adopt a resolution authorizing the subcommittee to determine distribution of remaining donations for the Glenview fire area.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I have some short comments just to summarize the recent recommendations of the subcommittee, and perhaps the subcommittee members will have some additional comments for you. The report in front of you outlines a recent meeting of the subcommittee along with 3 resident members who have recently been appointed and added to the committee in order to provide a strong representation and perspective of the neighborhood of individuals who have been impacted and damaged by the results of the explosion and fire on September 9th. As the council is aware, based on your previous action and that action being based on previous recommendation of the subcommittee, we have proceeded to distribute a very large portion of the approximately $399,000 which was donated to the city for the benefit of the victims of the explosion and fire. In total, we have allocated a total of $352,000. Checks have been cut in that amount, and many and virtually most of the checks have been picked up and distributed to the individuals eligible under the council's previous policy. There is a summary in your packet that represents the current status of the distribution effort as of last week, the beginning of last week. Since that time, I'm told that another approximately 12 families have picked up their checks. So we are down to about 20 checks remaining to be picked up of the original approximately 100 individuals eligible to receive checks. So I would say over the past 2 weeks, there's been a very good progress in getting those funds out to the individuals who are eligible under the council's policy. As the council is aware, the subcommittee's recommendation included a relatively modest remainder amount to be held back for further consideration, and it's that discussion that's in front of you tonight, what to do about those funds. Based on discussion at a meeting last week among the subcommittee, now consisting of 5 members, the committee recommends that a very simple process be established whereby a form be mailed to all of the addresses in the Glenview neighborhood, and residents be solicited to submit a very simple, short statement of their need in order to request funds from the remainder amount of what is now approximately $47,000. Distribution of those funds would be made in amounts up to a maximum of $2,000 each, according to the committee's recommendation. And I believe it continues to be the committee's intent that those funds be distributed as quickly as possible. And to that end, the committee proposes that the form be distributed soon, that then we begin immediately to accept requests by way of the completed form, and that the committee meet as needed in order to review those submittals and to determine the distribution of funds based on their assessment, consideration of those requests. That, in a nutshell, is the action, the authorization to proceed in that manner is the subcommittee's request of you tonight. There is a resolution presented that would document that action. I would only add that the committee had one additional conversation, and staff was directed to do some research, which we have done, and we will report back in a little bit more detail to the subcommittee about a proposal that originated in the January 5th community meeting that was hosted by the subcommittee members, whereby residents were invited to come and make their suggestions directly to the subcommittee at an early stage in the distribution decision-making. At that time, a resident raised a suggestion that funds could potentially be spent to hire a person who would act as an advocate or a one-on-one assistance provider to work with residents who might be experiencing difficulties primarily with their insurance companies in resolving insurance reimbursement issues. Potentially an advocate could work on other issues, but that seemed to be the primary topic of concern. Staff was asked to do some research on that topic. We will report back to the subcommittee, and it's our assessment that there is probably a way to provide some additional services in that arena through our contacts both at the Insurance Commissioner's Office as well as within the nonprofit service community. At this point, I don't anticipate that the committee will be recommending to you a huge allocation out of these funds for that purpose, but that is another topic that's currently on the table and under consideration by the committee. So at this time, the committee is requesting your authorization to proceed as outlined and for your authority for them to make decisions and distribute funds to residents based on the individual resident requests.
Good. Any additional comments by the committee?
Council Member O'Connell and I remain sensitive to the fact that we do want to make a very expeditious decision on what we do with these funds, and at the same time we want to make sure that we are making the best possible use of those funds. And so, as the city manager mentioned, the discussion that we had with the resident members of the subcommittee focused on two issues. One, the distribution of cash assistance immediately, and we discussed the idea of distributing a form. So that is one thing that we want to get the council's approval to do, is to solicit that that information from the residents, and also the approval to move forward with acting on those forms as they come in and making decisions as a committee as to the validity of those requests and making a judgment on how those funds should be distributed. The second topic, of course, was the possible use of the funds for providing an advocate. And most of the feedback that we got during that discussion was around people having issues dealing with their insurance, dealing with contractors, and really the need for somebody that understands some of these issues to be involved in helping them get through these sometimes very difficult negotiations that they have to go through in the process of rebuilding. The amount of funds, of course, that we have in reserve right now are rather limited, and again, so we decided to explore that as a separate track, but not delay this other process. So what we're also looking for is direction from the full council on whether that is something that we should be exploring or whether we should maintain our focus on distributing the funds. So that's what we'd like to discuss tonight.
Any comments, Rico?
Through the chair. Just quickly, I have a few, but the first one is are the names of the folks that are serving on the subcommittee with you going to be communicated, or is that not being done? Or
May I? I wanted to make 2 points, and
Okay,
that was one
sorry.
of them. The subcommittee members asked to remain anonymous.
Okay.
They live in the neighborhood. They have been affected by the fire, and they don't want to be perceived or, I guess perceived as having favoritism or not, or they don't want to be asked questions as they're out walking around. So they asked to remain anonymous, and we told them we would do that. Also, any requests that come in, those will be kept confidential, so we're not going to broadcast who's asked for money or how much or any of those things. They'll come into a room, we'll sit down, we'll make the decisions, and those pieces of paper will be put in a safe place. So that's basically that part.
okay. Okay, so the $2,000, I guess, was a number that was derived just because of obviously looking at what's in the account versus, and that's where the 2,000, there was no real
It was-
scientific, it was just a matter of.
No, we wanted to reach as many people as possible with as much money as we could. So we discussed how much that would be, people could request as little as they want to, but no more than $2,000.
Is the subcommittee concerned that, according to the resolutions, I guess this application would go out to everybody in Crestmore too? Is that my understanding, with the exception of those 100 or so that have already received?
No, they can have it as well.
So they could, if they already received the initial, they could come back and request more for whatever. So we're talking about over 300 homes that will receive this.
Yes.
So the subcommittee is prepared to receive a variety of this and spend the time that is required, because it may not be a lot, and it could be. It's
Yes.
going to be very hard to dissect and come through and try to allow one's heart and mind to make these decisions on such a terrible situation. So the subcommittee also is asking for it no longer to come to the city council for review or approval as far as the remainder $47,000 funds.
Well, we would like the council to approve our action on anything that is requested through the form, so that the subcommittee would have authorization to respond to anything that comes via those forms, but not anything beyond that. So if we were to say, have another recommendation to spend some of the funds for the advocate, if we choose to do that, then I think we would want to come back and request the city council to approve that action. But what we're looking for here is, again, so that we can keep the momentum going and not drag this out longer, that once we do get applications back, that we are allowed to take action on those.
Okay, and that makes me a little more comfortable about the advocate as far as it coming back on that,
Oh,
on
absolutely.
that notion. Specifically, now we're talking about the 47,000 potentially being utilized in $2,000 increments, or up to, we should say, by those in the affected area of the Crestmore 2. I have some mixed feelings as far as relinquishing that, because in essence, we have 2 members of the council, and we have 3 members of a subcommittee that, for their direction and their request to serve, was not to have identified. So I'm trying to understand how we can have some transparency so that there is some type of information or data that comes forward to the council, which is also available for public viewing, so that they have a clear view of what's going on. Because I think people did donate to this. They have an expectation and a right to see how these monies are being distributed.
We can work on that. We hadn't thought that part. I guess what we could do is keep the reason for the request anonymous, but who actually receives the request, who actually receives money, could be made public. I don't know how that works.
Well, it's under the
Part-
warrant register, so it's available in one form or another.
Right. Part of our discussion was that it is going to be a difficult thing to decide who gets what and how, and all those things. So we discussed a process that would keep it pretty easy to do, and it would take an average of everybody's score. We're going to score them and take an average of everyone's score. So no one person is going to determine anything. It's going to be the average of all 5 scores. It's a process I use in the Beautification Task Force Awards, and it works really well, and it just works really well. So that was that part. So the reason for the funds, we would like to keep anonymous or confidential.
And then I did notice that you had a submittal date of by May 1st, so you'll wait up until.
No, that's another, do you want to? That's another thing we discussed, and what we would like to do is, as they come in, say we get a batch of 5 or 6 or 10 right away, we'll work on those right away. We actually have a meeting date set for March 1st, 2nd?
First week of March.
The first Tuesday in March. We already have that meeting date set for the subcommittee, so we're ready to go as soon as you guys, as soon as we all
Yeah,
vote.
and I guess, and I think it is important to put a date, and I just didn't know if you put it too far out and somebody mid to late April says, well, and then they're saying, well, I'm sorry, I wish you'd come sooner because the 47,000's gone. I don't know, is May 1st too far out to ask for maybe for a return reply on that?
That was a discussion we had, that you can put your 2 cents worth in it. My feeling was we hold everything till May, the first week of May, and then do everything all at once. The rest of the subcommittee felt that it should go as they came in because of the urgency of some people's needs. So I acquiesced because of that. It's a compromise.
Yeah, I appreciate the feedback and answering all my many questions. But again, just seeing this, today for the first time, and trying to get a better feel for this. Again, I think the transparency is important. I think having some viewing for the public and for those who've contributed to the funds. But I also don't want to continue to delay by us having to meet every 2 weeks. One of the concerns I think residents, so couldn't be at the January 5th meeting due to the Brown Act, was that they want to be able to have the monies if needed, and they want to be able to have it in a timely and effective fashion. So I can see the Vice Mayor's point of waiting until May 1st, and in essence we've delayed that again, and that kind of defeated the purpose that we've heard. So I think you've answered enough of my questions that I would feel comfortable.
Okay.
First of all, regarding the authorization to give your subcommittee, I have no problem with that at all. I think you've done a great job already with a lot larger quantities of money, and you apparently are very, very, very sensitive. It's obvious to people's needs. So the process that you've developed is very well thought out and very sensitive, and I'm sure you'll continue in that mode. So as far as the authorization, I have no problem with that. I do have a little hesitancy on the advocate portion of it, because as we've said since September, this is uncharted territory for us, and every time we turn around there's something new happening. And I would just speculate that the person, whoever that person was that said we need an advocate for insurance, maybe a lot of those issues have already been answered simply because the passage of time has taken care of it. We've heard of issues with insurance and insurance companies and adjusters up there having some issues with a lot of the individuals, and I think, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, there are a lot of other facilities out there that can in fact be ombudsmen and put some pressure on and work between the homeowners and the insurance companies, so we don't have to take hard-earned money that was given to the individuals to put into an advocacy type of expense. So that's my 2 cents on the advocate. But once again, I think you've done a great job.
Thank you. I'd like to make a
Yes.
comment on that. One of the things that staff responded to everyone's questions on the subcommittee is just what you discussed, and they're researching the things that the Red Cross can do, their caseworkers, the insurance
United
Policyholders.
United
But the other one,
Policyholders.
and the
State Insurance Commissioner's
Thank you.
Office.
The State Insurance Commissioner's Office and the Long-Term Recovery Group all are working toward doing and finding ways and means to help people all with this. So those were avenues and venues that we're going to research before we spend any money on any other thing like the advocacy.
Great.
Okay.
Makes me
Okay.
more comfortable.
More discussion or action on this item?
The action, I'd like to introduce the resolution.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Aye.
Councilmember Medina,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Salazar,
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye.